Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag, brought to you by Red Ritter Outfitter, the fan favorite since 1975. Well, it's Kansas State week. Texas Tech, of course, is coming off a huge 37-34 victory over Texas last week, but Kansas State's coming off a huge victory over Oklahoma in Norman. And this one, of course, will be played in Manhattan, Kansas, the Little Apple. And Kansas State has really had Tech's number as of late, for the past decade, basically. Tech just has won one time in that span, way back in 2015, so when Mahomes was here. So it's been a while. Kansas State is 8-point favorites, but leading up to this game, we had our mailbag questions, and man, there's a lot of really good questions from inside the Red Raiders subscribers. So let's get right to it. The first one comes from Nas Raider, who says, it was lost in the broadcast, but how was the Instadium crowd and noise level in the second half? Well, it was great. Actually, I'm up in the press box, so I'm insulated from it a little bit, but it was, obviously a sellout. Most of the fans stayed for most of the game. Actually, it's been posted on the Insider, but you can go to YouTube, Barstool. Dana Beers, of course, was... he's doing like his top 5. He's looking for a new team to cheer for, and he came and took his official visit to Texas Tech for the UT game, and he had a really cool video from the stands, which, like I said, is on YouTube. It really shows just how good that crowd was for the UT game. Of course, they stormed the field and all that, and minus the one incident of the idiot fan pushing the Texas player, great crowd all the way around, and it really helped Texas Tech. There's no doubt, and it was loud. And like I said, for me, the key was they stayed for most of the fans stayed for the whole game, and just a terrific atmosphere. One of the best that's been at the Jones in a long time, and there was a lot of juice leading up to it. I do the radio show, Red Ritter Outfitter, Rockin' Pregame at Red Ritter Outfitter on University, across the street from the Jones. For every home game, just like 3 hours before the game, before kickoff. And so we were actually there 3.5 hours before the game, and there were already students lined up around the Jones waiting to get in, and a lot of activity and excitement surrounding the Jones. So that really gives you an idea of just what a great atmosphere it was. Like I said, loud crowd, stayed the whole game. You'll take that every time, that atmosphere. So it's actually going to be not till October 22nd until Texas Tech plays at home again, but they do have 4 home games over the final 6, over the final half of the season. So a lot of opportunities to really win some games, and this crowd to play a big impact, big role in Texas Tech winning those games. So I'm excited, but we're going to have to wait a while before Tech plays at the Jones again. All right, next question comes from Texas Tech Austin. He said, 2-part question, actually. He said, did meeting you before the game create the mojo needed to win the game? As I said, I do the Rockin' Pregame there at Red Ritter Outfitter, right across the street from the Jones on University. And so a lot of people come by and say what's up. A lot of you on Inside the Red Raiders. And then people just saying, that watch this YouTube channel also come up and say hi during the show. And it's great. And I got, getting to meet Texas Tech Austin. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've seen you. Well, this was the first time. I'm thinking of somebody else actually. That's been 2 games, but yeah, it was really nice meeting you and your wife, and it's really cool. I love getting to do that. So hey, if you're out there, anybody else, if you're out there and you want to come say what's up, Pete Christie's there. Who he's a great guy and been covering Texas Tech for a long time. Come on by and say what's up. And yeah, of course, it obviously played a big role in the win. All of that though, just going back to the atmosphere, that played a huge role in Texas Tech upsetting Texas. And then secondly, the win on Saturday guarantee that UT will not make an agreement to play Tech at a conference ever. Well, you wouldn't think UT would want to play Tech, like I said in a previous video, I think last week, or right after Tech beat UT. Look, you took the baseball series last year, you swept them in basketball, now you beat them on the gridiron. So, if I was Texas, I wouldn't want to play Tech either. I know Cody Campbell's been tweeting out basically saying that they're scared to play Tech, and I don't know, scared may be an exaggeration, but the way I look at it, I don't think Texas is going to play Tech in any sports. They're going to do their best not to, because there's really not anything in it for them, and that's the way the SEC's looked at it. I mean, look how A&M's been with all the schools in the Big 12. They like to pride themselves on the SEC is the best football and this and that, and losing to the Big 12 only, any team from the Big 12 only legitimizes the conference as a whole. And they like to, in the bowl game, it's like, oh, we didn't really have all our guys. We didn't really care about the bowl game. These guys showed up and were all hyped for it, and that's why they won. They try and play it off like that. But honestly, I would be surprised. And in talking with Chip Brown over at Horns 247, he said the same thing. He agrees that after next year, UT and OU will probably be gone, and he doesn't expect UT to come to Lubbock for any time in the foreseeable future. So that's really how I see it, to be honest. Unless politics get involved, and the governor, who was at the game, by the way, last week, somehow mandates or forces UT to play Texas schools, including Tech. That's the only way I really see it happen. All right, next question comes from Laxo Larry. He says, describe the vibe in the press box, especially during a game like we had last week. Does Mighty Joe Yeager ever let loose with profanities? And do we ever have I ever thought of setting up a live stream in the press box? I think we did that like forever ago, like 8 years ago or something. And I mean, maybe the response would be much better now, just because we've been here and the site is so much bigger than it was back then. So many more people on it, but I don't know. And I'm so focused on the game, and it's really hard for me. Sometimes I tweet, sometimes I'm just in the thread, sometimes I'm just paying attention to the game. So I really need to be consistent with those things, but I have to concentrate, and so maybe halftime would be something, but then again, I gotta eat too, man. I gotta, self-care. It's important. It's a long day if you count the radio show and then the press conference after and then doing all the content. So when I don't eat and I don't take care of myself, it hurts. I suffer, and the content suffers and all that. So I think it's a good idea, but at the same time, it might overcomplicate things and mess me up for the rest of the game and the day. So that's what I'm scared of. But that's cool that y'all want to see that. And in terms of how the press box is, I mean, like I said, we are removed from the crowd. First off, Texas Tech, they're first rate. They really are. I mean, they treat us so great. And teams from opposing, press from opposing teams or cover other teams that come always say, like, Texas Tech treats us so well. Great food. We're in there in the AC. We're front row 50-yard line. That's where Mighty Joe and my seats are. So, I mean, there's nothing to complain about. And, there's no cheering in the press box. I actually got chewed out by this old lady who's kind of the attendant. And for laughing. And I think it was after something. It wasn't like I was laughing, like rooting for Tech, but somebody said something funny, and I'm loud. I was laughing loudly, and she was like, "Sir, there's no cheering in the press box." I was like, "I'm not cheering. I'm just laughing." And she was like, "Well, you're too loud." And I was like, "I mean, I've been in press boxes all over the country, really. NBA, NFL, whatever. High school, Where there's a press box in Texas, and then, like I said, around the country, New York, California, I've been in a lot of them, and I've never been chided before. I've never been, given a stern talking to like I did from this really nice old lady. She's been there forever, about laughing too loud. So they're really strict about that. But Joe and I are cutting up almost the entire time. In terms of, like, we talk about the game, which I love. I really enjoy watching football with him. Yeah, some profanities get let loose. And I'll tell you what, there's been so many times, like I remember, Alyssa Crisso, like she actually cried at the Tech TCU game, that one, the tip one. And I was like, you can't cry. There's no cheering. You can't cry in the press box either, But she couldn't help it. She was so upset because it looked like Tech had beaten TCU, and that play, was amazing. Here just Saturday, when Texas went and tied it up and marched down the field in 20 seconds or whatever, Joe didn't cry, neither did I. But I was just talking about this with somebody else recently. Joe, his mouth was open, like agape, kind of like in shock, and he was shaking his head and the whole bloody hell thing he says. I was like, you gonna be all right? We both were having like a Sanford and Son moment just because it was so crazy. They came back from 2 touchdowns, looked like they're gonna win, then UT tied it, and you just knew that UT was gonna win in overtime. Just you had that feel. But of course they didn't. That's not how it played out. But yeah, we were definitely shocked. Like where you gotta worry about Maya Joe is Tech basketball. It was like when he's on press row, it's like, Joe, you can't get up and scream at the refs, That's where you gotta worry about Mighty Joe. And for me, it was covering Cowboy games. I remember like Cowboys, Redskins, or whatever they call themselves now, Commanders, but they were Redskins back then, on Thanksgiving, covering that, and that was tough. And I'm a wounded the Tomb Cowboy fan growing up there and all that, and for generations, we have been. That was really hard to keep quiet sometimes because, it's very tough being a fan sometimes, especially Cowboys and Red Raiders. So, press box is a good atmosphere, but sometimes we kind of wish we'd be in the crowd. I'm sure when y'all are really hot like last week, you wish you were up in the AC. But yeah, it's fun. I love watching games with my Joe. OBX Raider asks, he says, Adrian Martinez has had about as perfect a game as he ever played last week against Oklahoma. He says, while he hopes he comes back down to earth, how does Tech stop him? He says, Tech's defense is made to attack, and he's afraid that will create some space he needs to take off. I agree. Even Hudson Card, who, he hurt his ankle a couple weeks ago or whatever, he was able to rip off some long runs. You really didn't have to worry about that, with NC State's quarterback. Trying to think about who else. I know Houston's quarterback can run, but I've just thought that guy's been overrated. I really do. So I never really consider him just a huge threat. But though he can run, he has wheels. Martinez will gash Tech if they're not. And it's almost like they have to be disciplined and keep them contained and all that. But I do think there probably will be, not every play, but there'll be a spy. And Joe and I talked about this in other videos. Preview videos leading up to the game, but whether it'll be Krishan Merriweather, Kosai Eldridge, Muddy Waters, one of those guys to spy him, I do think there will be a guy at times, and I do think Tech has some. All those guys are quality candidates, and maybe there's somebody I'm not thinking of, maybe a Reggie Pearson. But how does that open up Kansas State's passing game then? If you're bringing a safety down or devoting a guy to spy Martinez. So that's going to be an interesting chess match for sure. And Tim DeRuyter is a very experienced play caller. This is not the first dual threat guy he's faced, but that is a concern of mine. That what you said, I think that's a very good question, and that's going to be. I think that could be a key storyline. How Texas Tech's been great in terms of all season long consistently getting pressure on quarterbacks. So if they can do that and are able to contain Martinez, I think that's going to go a long way towards Texas Tech pulling off the upset in Manhattan. All right, 78 Tech says, how's the QB that beat out Donovan Smith at their Vegas high school performing in college? Man, I looked this up, actually. And his name is Micah Bowens. And Micah Bowens went to Penn State out of high school, redshirted, and then transferred to Oklahoma. And he is a backup quarterback now. Obviously, he's not starting. I think this is his second year at Oklahoma. And I think he's third string right now. So he hasn't taken off like Donovan Smith has. And I remember that the competition between Donovan and Micah was like guys that covered at Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. They said the competition was really close. Donovan almost won that, but Micah won in the end. And some people thought that it should be Donovan Smith at quarterback. Now, they played Donovan at receiver instead. I think he was the leading receiver for him. And, they had a really good year. They probably won a state championship. That program is a monster in Las Vegas and Nevada. So, you're going to have a hard time like that with some of those competitions. I mean, you got a guy going to Penn State or Oklahoma and a guy going starting for Tech. That's some real talent there. But he hasn't had the career yet. He's still relatively young. That Donovan has. Donovan's already won some big games. Bowl game, beating Texas, beating Iowa State, beating Mississippi State, hung with Baylor already. He's only played 8, 9, or started in 7 or 8 games. So, Donovan's has an early lead in terms of collegiate career between those two. San Antonio Texan says, Tech is 3-1 a quarter of the way through the season. What is my updated season win-loss prediction? Now, I'm not ready to change my win-loss. I already did in the offseason, actually in fall camp. I went from predicting Tech would be 6-6 to 7-5. And look, I said the key was getting the split the first 6 games before your bye. Very tough schedule. Right now they're in the midst of their 4th consecutive ranked opponent. And next week against Oklahoma State, no doubt will be a 5 of the first 6 games against ranked top 25 opponents. That's just crazy. And I said if they could just split that, again, 4 of their final 6 games of the season are at home. Now, Kansas looks a lot better than they have in a long time, so that's not a gimme, and I think that's there. I'm not sure. But you get Baylor at home. And, TCU is good, but I think you could beat them. West Virginia looks very beatable, and that's at home right out of the bye. And you have Oklahoma to finish the season. You have some tough games. It's the Big 12, but I think they could win 4 of those 6. I really believe that. So what I'm saying is I wouldn't be surprised if they drop the next 2. At Kansas State, a team like you just struggled against, and it's there. It's a really tough place to play. And right now, this team has proven it can win at home, it can win tough games, it can win against very good opponents, but it hasn't proven that it can win on the road. I think it's capable of that, but they haven't proven it yet. So this one at Kansas State and then at Oklahoma State, which might be the best team in the Big 12. We'll have to see. We'll see next week. It might be, they may not be considered that after I believe they played Baylor this week, which is a really good game. So I don't be surprised if they're 3-3 coming out of the break, and that's still, again, mission accomplished. Now, if they go to Kansas State and they win and they start off 4-1, yeah, I'll probably change some predictions. But until then, I'm standing pat at 7-5. But like I said, a big game, Texas Tech at Kansas State, 11 a.m. kickoff. Now the game's not being televised; it's being streamed on ESPN Plus, which really sucks. Because I think this is a really good game. I believe the Wildcats are favored by 8 last time I saw, but still, I expect it to be closer than that. It could come down to a final possession. I think these are 2 tough teams, good defenses. Tech wins the turnover battle again. I think they're going to be right there and have a good opportunity. But I can't wait to see how it plays out. Until then, thank you for watching, and until next time.